When did your feeling about something is very wrong here turned out to be true? Over 20 years ago when I, 17-year-old or so, two of my buddies came to pick me up to get the night started. I got into the backseat of a Geostorm. If you remember those, it was a tiny car made of plastic. As soon as I sat down I had a feeling of impending doom rushing over me. I had never felt that feeling before and never felt it since. I immediately was asked to be let out with some excuse and said we would catch up later. I get out and feeling quickly fades, so I go on about my day. About 2 hours later I catch up with my other friends and am greeted to learn that two that came to pick me up earlier were involved in major car accident. Both were seriously hurt and in the hospital. This accident happened about 10 minutes after they tried to pick me up. They both survived. The car did not survive though, and it was struck in the passenger side rear right where I was sitting. I'm pretty positive by seeing the damage done that I would not have survived. As a teenager, I used to help an elderly neighbor maintain her home, yard work, painting, etc. She was a sweet person and lived there with her cat, Tompkins, a beautiful black and white kitty. I'd go over to visit once in a while and hear stories from Miss Lanny's past. Then I noticed that her customary nighttime lights weren't coming on in her living room or kitchen for several days in a row. So I went over to check and found her dead on the kitchen floor, with Tompkins keeping watch and looking bewildered. As I described here in AskReddit a long time ago, my parents and I found a good home for Tompkins and helped with the funeral arrangements. When my mom said, "If you tell the truth you won't get in trouble. How to teach a kid the value of lying in less than 60 seconds. I was walking back to my dorm from class and had a gut feeling that I needed to see my friend right away. I walked into his dorm room and found him on the floor seizing. He is fine now, but it was still weird that I just knew something was wrong before I had seen him at all that day. Today, I work as a nurse and I took handover on a patient who had a little dizziness, a little nausea and a swollen abdomen. She was fairly bright, able to talk, nothing seemed too horrific. But she was turning a grim grey color and breathing quickly. Our average wait time today was 2 hours. I could have put her back in the queue and moved on. But I had a little dark feeling that there was something sinister happening here. So I called our most senior doctor out of a consultation and asked him to see her. Right F now. Ever heard of your abdominal aorta? Enormous blood vessel that can pouch out, suddenly rupture, and make you bleed internally to death in minutes? It's called a burst AAA, abdominal aortic aneurysm. You've heard of it now. That's what she had. I've never seen one before. But now I have. Within 5 minutes she was barely responding. Within 10 her blood pressure had dropped to a barely sustainable level. Within 20 minutes I was pouring blood into her, and 8 people were around the bed. Within an hour she was on an operating table clinging to life. But because I raised the alarm, and because my team worked our asses off, that woman is still, somehow, alive. Feels good, man. When I was 8 and heading out for school, my dad stopped me, gave me a hug, and told that he loved me. Not something he'd usually do like that. I had a weird feeling the whole day, and I remember drawing a picture for him. When I got home, police were everywhere and my mom and some neighbors found me and told that he had killed himself. I later found out that it was because he had been diagnosed with ALS. The picture I drew that day was buried with him. Edit. Thank you so much for your kind words. It means a lot. It really did mess up my family. My little brother and I got taken away from home a few years later because my mom became mentally ill. Life has been tough. I often wonder how it would have been if he was still here, and I miss him greatly, but I sort of already forgave him for leaving. I wouldn't wish that disease on my worst enemy. October 6th, 2017. Was a little bit after midnight and had just gotten off of FaceTime with my girlfriend. Put my phone on do not disturb, like I do every night. Plugged it and went to sleep. About half an hour later, I popped awake and felt like I needed to look at my phone. Was glad I did. Very good friend of mine had called me Phone never rang because of do not disturb. Instantly knew something was very wrong. In the few years we've known each other, she had only physically called me once or twice before that. She left me a voicemail saying to call her back as soon as I got her message. Her mom died of a heart attack that night and she wanted to tell me. Was almost a year to the day after her fiance, now husband, lost his mom. Got to attend their wedding last month. Seeing them have a memorial to their moms in the middle of the ceremony very much made me cry. I still have the voicemail. Can't bring myself to delete it. Woke up one morning with a sinking, panicky feeling. I knew my grandmother was going to die. I just couldn't get anyone to believe me. I was young, so I lost it in the school lobby, screaming at my mom that I couldn't go to class because my nana was going to die. Everyone assured me that she was stable, though she was very ill, and that I should go to class anyway. She died that afternoon. As I climbed out onto a cliff to get a picture of a cave in the middle of a waterfall, something felt weird. I then began sliding down the cliff. I barely caught myself on a fracture in the rock and eventually got my feet back on solid ground. The next day, my sister had the news on, and they found a dead guy under that cliff. He'd been missing for a few days. I went to go eat at a restaurant with my toddler, but something said not to eat there. Decided to just go home and make a meal. The restaurant was on the news later because it caught on fire. This happened just the other day. Things have been rough lately, but last Wednesday I woke up extremely sick to my stomach and very anxious. I felt like crying the whole day. My best friend's brother called later in the afternoon to tell me that my friend had killed himself the night before. It has been pure hell ever since. PM me if you ever need someone to vent to. Sometimes getting it all out helps. I used to work at a university as a departmental administrator. There was one student who came in multiple times to talk to my coworker who had an adjoining office, so he would regularly come in through my office, occasionally try to hit on me, and then sit down and shoot the shit with my 65-year-old coworker. Most days when he came in he was dressed pretty emo. One day he came in dressed like some sort of pager boy complete with that style of hat and suspenders. He hit on me even more aggressively than usual, talked to my coworker, and then literally skipped out of my office. I went home that night and told my husband about the guy and said he just had a horrible cloud of creepy around him. The next day he was arrested for drugging a girl by putting a roofie in a smoothie he made for her and then raping her. The dumbest cops that arrested him left him alone in detainment and he managed to escape, cut off his handcuffs, steal a car, and then flee across state lines. It ended up being a multi-day chase and I don't even remember if they caught him. The campus sent out several update emails, even going too far as to warn people with whom he had had contact to keep watch for him wanting some sort of revenge. I have never had such a strong premonition that someone was deeply evil, and I hope never to again. Creeped me out for a good while. Once when I was little, we went fishing on a Sunday with my uncle, an aunt, uncles and mom's sister, and my 2 cousins. See, my uncle was a very successful man. We were really close, since he lived a block away from us. He even took me to his job one day, where I met his boss. That day is what made me choose the path I'm following now, the degree I'm trying to get. Anyway, we went fishing, and I hadn't had that much fun in a while, but I had this feeling of impending doom, like I knew that scene wouldn't ever happen again, that it was temporary. That was the first time that I felt that way. I was 9. It really was the last time, since my uncle fell ill 2 days later, Tuesday, passing away on the Friday at around 9 PM. I wasn't allowed to see him in the hospital, so that Sunday really was the last time I saw him. Nothing was ever the same after his passing. There were 3 unrelated divorces within the family, including my parents and the aunt that went with us. I mean, all of this could have, probably would have, happened had him not passed, but it's my last memory of easier times. Everything slowly fell apart after that. So when I was little, my cousin that lived 30 minutes away was my best friend. Our parents used to meet up at my grandmother's house every week. just so that we could play together. Occasionally I would go on sleepovers to her house. One weekend when I was staying over with them, it was coming up to bedtime, and I had a really weird feeling, and just wanted to go home. I was crying hysterically, and my uncle brought me home. Only this year I found out that my dad had planned on leaving my mother that night, and me ringing crying saying that I wanted mommy and daddy made him change his mind. My mother doesn't know this, nor any of my siblings. My dad told me one night while we were out at a bar, and he was drunk.